Hello and welcome to the podcast where we explore the genre of audio storytelling, whether that's through audio drama or through actual plays. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Kessir. Kessir, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hi, I'm Kessir RILINIKI. I'm the author and producer of Counterbalance, and I'm also an actual player on the podcast The Sprouting and sometimes on The Lucky Die as well. Yeah.
Exactly. And we had Hem on the other day, which was
Yeah.
really great to talk. So what got you into this crazy world, in terms of like the storytelling and sort of and also the actual play side?
So I've always been working on stories in my head. I used to be an artist. I still kind of am, but I've kind of dropped off the visual art a little bit because I had some health issues that didn't allow me to continue doing it. So I've been looking for other ways to convey stories that were in my head, and I didn't want to just stick to writing because I personally have some problem with just writing or reading more so I wanted to something that's a little bit more immersive and a little bit more I don't want to say interactive, but a little bit more, it makes the world feel a little bit fuller, quote unquote. If there's multiple voices and sound effects and all that, it makes the worlds come to life that you envision.
It's a depth, isn't it, of
Exactly.
contextual side. And I think there's something about, so I've noticed it as I've got older in particular, but it might just be that the access to new and interesting and innovative audio drama has become, I think, it's exploded.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely find I don't have the patience for physically reading anymore. And I listen to sort of, fiction and non-fiction combined, a lot of skeptical podcasts, a lot of science podcasts. But there's something magical about that you've got a storyteller conveying the world, and the sound designer has managed to create the environment. Even though there's only a handful of voices, maybe there are two voices, something about the positioning and the effects and the reverberance of it can make all the difference, can't it?
Yeah, sometimes I send a very plain sounding dialogue to my sound designer because I have someone else who's doing the sound design for me.
Yeah.
And what she gives me back sounds like there's an entire war zone going on and you're standing in the middle of it and there's explosions over there and there's something happening over there.
Exactly. But that's magical, isn't it? I mean, again, because you can convey it. And I've always said it, the imagination is always the best graphics card there is. And I used to work for NVIDIA back in the day. But there is genuinely something about that, though, isn't it? That kind of magic. But I think there's also something about what it forces you to do in storytelling, because I don't have any clues. You just said that there's an explosion, or there's something over there. I don't have any physical clues about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But you're finding ways to convey that.
Yeah, it's like the sound is implying what is going on and the rest is happening in your head.
Yeah.
It's not, so if you're just watching a movie, it's kind of like food that is chewed for you, quote unquote. That's a really weird way to say it, but...
No, I get it, yeah.
The audio is kind of like, there are chunks and you get to decide how you want to enjoy it.
Yeah, neatly prepared, shall we say?
Yeah.
It's it's almost a culinary process to butcher the metaphor even further. This idea that you're sampling in in these sort of bites of conversation combined with audio, combined with sort of the spatial nature of the positioning of that audio, which makes that kind of feel magnificent. So, you somebody who wants to tell stories. What about Counterbalance became the thing that you needed to talk about?
So, as I said, I've been someone who wanted to tell stories before, but I always felt that there was something missing in my stories. And so I've been part of the audio drama community way before I had the idea for Counterbalance.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love the medium and I've wanted to create audio, or at least I wanted to dabble in creating audio stories before. So I kind of joined the community and I've been part of what was then called the Audio Drama Hub.
Yep.
That's what it's called now.
Yep.
And at some point I had this weird sensation of an awakening where I realized what character interaction, character arcs can do for a story. And I wanted to put the stories I've had in my head aside for a bit and focus entirely on a new story where I could play around with the idea of character interactions, character developments, character arcs that kind of focus on just all assembly of small assembly of characters, so I can really focus on fleshing them out well. And that's how Counterbalance kind of started. I basically just wanted to go completely tabula rasa on my storytelling and start with something completely new. And that's how I started with Counterbalance. And then in the process of doing that, I also decided to make it a small cast so I don't have to deal with like a mass amount of actors right away, because this is an indie production, so it's already going to eat my personal budgets.
I was going to say, there is something, I know we talk about the one-room drama a lot in storytelling, and I think there's something about like keeping the constraints in place. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's amazing. I was talking to Emily Inkpen the other day, who's also part of the audio drama hub, and I went along because I got introduced to that because Karim is a friend of mine, and I didn't realize he's opened my eyes to this community of people who do this stuff. And I found it fascinating that you've got people like Emily who's trying to build these really kind of global scale stories, but actually I think that's a huge effort, that's a huge kind of job to create, and obviously different casts, different contexts, different sounds, etc. Creating these smaller stories for me seems much more manageable, but I think to be able to find a way to do that captivates and takes the audience with you, particularly a story that they have no history with, that's a challenge. How do you get people to sort of dive in and listen to that new story?
That's difficult to say. I think you probably need to start small and kind of develop the whole setting and the characters around an initial first episode that already draws you in or has like a compelling premise. It needs to have something that draws people in episode 1, and then you need to flush it out around that instead of throwing them in right in the final battle and then going from there.
Yeah, and I think as a metaphor, one of my favorite, because I'm fascinated by audio narratives, or just narrative structures in general. As somebody who works in the games industry, I'm fascinated by the way we tell stories in games. I'm fascinated by the way I tell stories as a game writer for LARPs and role-playing games, but also I'm a very bad amateur writer myself. But there's something about even thinking about the opening line, and the classic example being 1984's, it was a cold, wet day in April and the clock struck 13. You're immediately setting up this kind of normality that's suddenly off kilter in order to grab the attention. I imagine kicking off something about a new world, you've got to kind of have this level of familiarity that you're then perverting to capture that kind of attention. Is that sort of what you're describing?
I think so, yeah. You need to start with something that the audience can relate with. Like if I started the Counterbalance completely with Counterbalance has elements of like using made up language. If I threw made up language at them as the first thing, they'd drop right off the they'd go, okay, next.
I kind of like it though. That would be an amazing feat if you managed to pull it off. But again, there's another example. Your use of runic language being a core part of what you're trying to do in the way you're world building.
Yeah.
I mean, so like we've said, that level of balance between familiarity, surprise, and innovation. How do you use what is the authorial value of bringing in something like a language? What's the emphasis, the point that's trying to make for you?
What is the point it's trying to make?
Well, what I'm saying, one of the things if you have a lot of people talking about writing, they'll often say, every word has to count. It has to serve a function as well as a piece of information. You've got to have some sort of hook as well as pull as well as push, if that makes sense. And you're choosing to introduce language which is not understood by the reader.
Right.
What is that bringing to the story? Well, how is that evolving the story? Whilst you're here, don't forget to check out our actual play, The Anything Could Happen show, on YouTube and all good podcast sites, where I put my guest players through no-win scenarios with limited information and always against the clock. And of course, where anything could happen.
Why is the ritual stopped? Why is the ritual stopped? No, I'm praying, I'm doing...
Andros, explain to us which ritual has stopped.
No, all my ritual symbols have disappeared. I don't know where they're going. Everything's going dark.
Drayton,
What is happening?
Reroute power.
I don't know what that means. I am the last caretaker. I am the last caretaker. I am the last caretaker.
We'll see what we can do to restore your rituals.
Andros, you will not be the last caretaker. We're going to do everything we can in our power to keep you safe and keep all the souls aboard your ship safe, okay?
No, the noises was something has caused the screaming.
Are those
Something has caused
alarms?
Screaming.
Okay. Are any of your rituals still active anywhere in
No.
in the room?
If I am not the last caretaker, then we are dead. My progeny have not emerged yet. I must be the last caretaker, or we die.
At the beginning of me writing it, it didn't really have a purpose yet, but it kind of developed as I went.
Yeah.
I realized it makes more sense to strew in like 1 or 2 words more every episode. So like someone who binges would actually catch on to the words and maybe actually realize what they mean, and like in the next episode they would know exactly what it entails. And I have someone on the Discord that actually collects all this made up words that made their own cheat sheet basically of what they mean.
Yeah.
It started out being like since it's a magic language, it started out being like this is offsetting it from, like, a lot of people use Latin to convey magic, and I was like, I don't want to do that route because it makes no sense in a world that doesn't have Latin.
Yeah.
So I used my own language to strew it in as like a magical language, but it also like it started tying in with the whole plot or the character arcs a little bit more, because the runes that they're using aren't just random words. They actually have meaning to the person, and they have effects that they create in the world. But those effects also kind of like the way someone uses the runes is kind of tied in with the person that is using them is.
No, I completely get it. It's something about the weight, the emotional weight that it adds. And it makes in this case, magic, the transactional process of using that word carry so much more resonance, in my view.
Yeah.
I know it's not quite the same kind of example, but I'm a massive fan of Firefly. It's stupid, but it's a harper on about a show that got cancelled so long ago. But the choice to use Chinese to swear made a lot of the cultural connection of that world make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you're trying to do with, what you're doing with magic, using this kind of runic language, is you're defining a space that's your world, that's not part of the cliches that we've seen time and time again, but it's something that you can own. And then as a listener, we feel we can own, in that sense of we understand. And like I say, those people who understand what those words actually mean even better.
Yeah.
But that resonance, we can recognize something important's happened or happening.
Yeah, it kind of offsets the world from, like, if you're just reading something, I don't know, Sherlock Holmes or whatever, you would definitely know it's like something else than that. It's setting it apart, and at the same time, it adds to the world building, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's face it, you're not alone in thinking it. We've got Elvish out there, J.R.R. had the various thoughts on that one. Yeah. I mean, number of people who perform Klingon opera.
You've got Dothraki.
Yeah, that's right. You name it. There's so many, but it's a massive undertaking to be able to do it consistently. My impression is that you've done that in a careful way, rather than having to spend years defining what the language is and its structure. Is that fair, or have you spent a long time thinking about how grammar works and how much vocabulary somebody needs to know? Yeah,
I actually had the whole language set up before I write Counterbalance, because I'm not just I'm a world builder and a storyteller, and like language was one thing that I really like doing. So I have like a whole dictionary that has more than 1,300 words and a whole grammar structure behind it. But for Counterbalance, I knew that the audience wasn't going to be aware of any of that. So I really used it sparingly, and I limited myself to, like, this character is going to use maybe 2 swears, and this character is going to use 2 very different swears, which sets them apart because they are from different corners of the world. So it wouldn't make sense for them to use the exact same swears.
No, I get it. But then you just highlighted something really interesting about world building, and I'd like to know a little bit more about kind of your approach to it. So it sounds like you did a whole bunch of, before you even started writing the narrative arc, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like from what you're saying, you'd built an idea of what this world was going to be, the way it was structured, the way the language operated. Is that right?
Yeah. Like the other stories that I have wanted to work on are set in the same world. So
Okay.
I was basically just when I went into Counterbalance, I was borrowing from ideas that I've previously established
Yeah.
in chunks and concepts somewhere else.
And so that means you've got a depth of knowledge of that world. That means, so I think one of the things that I find fascinating about world building, good world building, is that the elements that you're exposed to as a participant, as a listener to that world, has a deeper and wider range that it hints at. You don't give everything on a plate. There's implied depth, and it sounds like it's a lot easier to have that level of implied depth if you've actually got a lot more depth. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I was just talking about that with a friend yesterday. We were talking about like writing characters, and one thing we were discussing was that like if you're writing a character, even if they're just like an extra in a scene and they don't have much dialogue, try to give that character something that they did in their backstory. Even if it doesn't come up, but it will inform the way you will write or play the character, if this is an actual play. And it's kind of the same for world building. Like in Counterbalance, I have this depth of a world, but I didn't use a lot of it. But whenever it was necessary, I kind of borrowed from it just to strew it in the world and make it feel a little bit more rich. It doesn't matter if it doesn't get explained to the audience later on. If
in
that's
some ways, it's better it's not explained.
Yeah.
You create a possibility space for the audience to fill.
Yeah. I mean, the audience is free to wonder or like have their own thoughts about these topics if they want. And if it comes up later, then they can be happy they caught onto something.
Yeah, and then that can affect your choices of what you want to do in the next. One of the things I love about the actual play that I'm doing is the world is the only consistent character. All the players play random characters in that world, and they may live, they may die, they may come back, they may not. Most of them will not come back.
Okay.
Because it's intentionally a intense dilemma where the consequences exist. But what that's meant is that decisions in the way that each of the players talk about the universe that they're in becomes canon by action.
Yeah.
So the pronunciation of one of the species got changed because Karim, in I think the very first episode, decided to pronounce it in a weird way. And it was magical. And that sort of thing, I think, where your performers can contribute to the exploration world is one of the things I think is really joyful, but particularly in the actual play world. But do you find, because a lot of this sounds like you're doing a lot of preliminary work, you're doing a lot of scripted work. When you come to actually record this, how much space is there for the actors to sort of engage in the flow? I mean, because I'm not saying there's right or wrong to have them change things. I'm just interested to see where you are on this spectrum of improvisation and interactivity versus scripted and performance.
Yeah. So I direct all my actors and I'm in the space with them because of the words that are being used. I need to be consistent across all actors. And
makes sense.
Also, some characters have like an arc or like a hidden motive or whatever. And I need to inform the actors about these changes in how the dynamic is for the character, or like if they would say a question a little bit in a different way or any sentence. And that's the reason I'm doing directed sessions. But I do encourage them to do ad-libbing or improvisation if they feel that it is more in the character, if they get a sense of the characters. So I often do directed sessions with one or two actors, especially if they're like bouncing off of each other, and then I will allow them to just go nuts. And like if they feel like there needs to be some improvisation or some reactions, then they're absolutely free to record them.
And that brings it to life, doesn't it?
But absolutely.
I get the impression you've got a particular vision that you're trying to convey. And I think that's the strengths of the scripted genre, is that the creative vision, the driving force behind it can hone that direction and benefit from improvisation around the edges to make that feel electric. But
Yeah.
I think there's something about a crafted piece which stands alone in a style of storytelling.
Yeah.
So yeah, go for it.
No, I personally, I know that there are, so I'm also a voice actor and I've done
Yeah.
voice acting for a bunch of other writers before. And I know there are a bunch of writers that will absolutely not allow deviation from the script.
Yeah.
They are like, every word on the page is there because I wrote it and there's intention behind it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, then I will do it as you want. But there are
Absolutely.
also some that will love improvisation, and I personally am on the spectrum of, yes, give me all the improvisation and I will find a way to make use of it, even if it's not for this particular scene, but maybe it can be a reaction in a different context by this, like if this character remains in the scene, if they're just like doing a reactionary sound or whatever, I'll take it and I'll find a way to use it.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like you want to get the scripted piece out as a scripted piece, but you're probably going to take more than one take. And if you happen to take elements that allow you to get extra material in the edit, we may find something magical out of that.
Yes.
For me, this is an interesting, and I want to go back to like the world building in a second, because I think I missed out on a section. I want to explore arcs for world building as well as for characters. Before we do that, I want to carry on with this angle of the spectrum of this kind of like scripted versus improvised, all the way down to a tabletop where the improvisation is essentially tempered with, for example, dice rolls. And you've obviously been a player and a performer and a writer. What sort of benefits do you see in the way that you're making Counterbalance to the kind of more structured format? But also, what lessons do you think you may have learned from having tried those other techniques as well?
So in Counterbalance is a little bit more streamlined. I can get to, like, I can have more control over the structure of an episode. I have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And like in actual plays, you kind of, like, if you're doing it episodically, you can kind of sort of have a beginning, but like the end might not be what the DM or any of the players have anticipated.
You said the word might. I think never is.
I mean, unless the DM like sets out to make sure all characters are dead by the end, then...
Oh, yeah. I've been there. What my favorite technique, because I'm an improvising DM, my favorite technique is to make the players think that I railroaded them when actually all I did was respond immediately to what they did, regardless, and as if it was all intentional. Fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, though. There's something about this idea of understanding, like, the constraints allow you to have a more rounded, more circular product in terms of the experience for the listener.
Yeah.
Whereas the kind of more improvised elements and the kind of actual gameplay provides that kind of chaotic sense of discovery. In fact, I'd argue the level of personal stake as a listener in the outcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Like if they are rooting for one particular player or a character, there's a lot more randomness to what they will do or what will happen because of the dice rolls.
Absolutely. So let's go back to that thing I missed out earlier on. So you talked about building the world and the world building and how important that was before you kind of really got into writing the story, because you were writing multiple stories in that world. But that strikes me as an interesting one, because I think of the world as almost a character in its own right. In fact, I almost think, so one of my favorite techniques, which is not one I came up with, is a friend of mine who does this in role-playing games. He's not professional. He doesn't do this as live experiences, doesn't record anything. But he always wrote his games where every location in the world, some things were going to happen.
Okay.
And if you were there, you could affect those outcomes. But if you weren't, they were going to happen. And I thought it was an incredibly interesting way to write worlds, because it meant that the whole world around you was changing and evolving, and it made the whole environment seem much more alive. Now, that's a pretty extreme way of writing, and my goodness, the amount of effort he put in to make that possible. And given it was a game played by like 6 of us, I mean, incredible. That's not, I think, sensible for everybody, but it's an interesting lesson.
It's an interesting method.
Yeah, exactly. Other people have a static world. This is what it is, and then you play things as if the world is a stage. Where do you sit on that spectrum in terms of your worlds?
So for Counterbalance, I think I'm on the later spectrum, but in the world building itself, I'm kind of on the I have a timeline, I have a whole.
Yeah.
There is a certain timeline at which point some events happen, but I don't have it for I don't have this place is gonna have this happen at exactly this time, or whenever the story takes place. It's kind of a little bit more specific. It's not when the camera
it's
suddenly
a
pans
timeline
over
for
there.
the world rather than from each city in the world. I totally get it. I think it's really, I mean, like I say, I think it's a fascinating way to look at storytelling, is how you handle. Everyone's going to have their own approach to how they create and evolve their world. But I think the timeline part is such an important aspect, because my view is that if the world isn't going to change around the characters, what are the characters doing in that world? It's kind of what's my question. And it can work, but I think it's interesting. I feel like the character more grounded in the world if they have an impact in their surroundings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between the first thing where you, as the DM, you have set events happening. That's a story-driven story. And the other approach where the characters where the DM is adjusting to what the characters are doing, that's a character-driven story.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. And where you fit between the two is kind of what makes the world have its own flavor and taste. And so we've talked a lot about kind of storytelling, world building, we then started moving into the kind of production part of it. I like the fact that you were talking about this as taking a directorial kind of approach to it. So you're sitting with two or more performers, having them react to each other. That sounds like quite an important factor to create that kind of conversation. And I know a lot of, for example, games, you will often have a recording where each audio voice actor will basically do their parts and do their scripted lines, but they're very rarely in the same room as each other when that's happening.
Yeah.
I think that's the case for some animation, not always. I think that you do have the format you're describing in some of the animation side of this as well.
Yeah.
But what does that kind of I mean, in terms of impact on the final product, what do you think the directorial view really brings to that?
So if I don't have the chance to get the characters that are talking to each other in a scene to be in the same room at the time, then I will be I will try to guide them to be for one, matching the same tone, matching the same energy, and matching, for example, if two characters are standing outdoors talking against the wind, then I'm gonna need both of them to raise their voices a little bit, or if they're talking about against a distance, or if they're angry at each other, then informing them about these kind of things so that the performances match at the end of the day. Yeah,
that emotional quality, because we've all experienced it in a game where someone says something, an NPC says something, it's completely emotionally out of context.
Yes.
And that definitely takes us out of the kind of the suspension of disbelief, doesn't it?
Yeah. Not only that, but also the pronunciation of names that have already been established.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm terrible. This is why I'll never be a voice actor. My ability to be consistent isn't there. I can perform, no problem. I can interview, no problem. I can't keep things consistent, let alone accents. I can keep an accent, but only in that episode. If I'm recorded later, it's a completely different personality. Anyway, so we talked about kind of that kind of production value and so on and so forth. Now, you've got these recordings, you've got a sound engineer you're working with. Well, how are you working with the sound engineer to get the final product together?
So I do the dialogue editing first, which means I take all the files. I always keep the files as a whole. Sometimes actors will offer to send you their lines cleaned up to just the 3 takes. And I say, no, I want the file as a whole, because I record my side of the if it's digital directing, then I record my side as well. So in case I make on the fly edits, I remember them when I'm doing the dialogue editing.
Yeah.
Then after that,
do you document? How are you kind of tracking lines to script? Audio to specific lines in your script. How are you tracking that?
So I have the actors open the files
Yeah.
at the same time as I do, and we have page numbers and line numbers, and
Yeah.
I tell them, okay, now let's do line 5 one more time with a little bit more angry, a little bit more sad, a little bit more whatever. And once we're done through them, like we go line by line with each character, and then we usually don't miss any of the lines, but sometimes it does happen when I accidentally miswrite the name of the character or whatever. Things can
It
happen.
happens. Yeah.
Well, I usually try to do the dialogue pre-cutting, like cutting it into takes relatively shortly after the recording. But I'm far behind schedule right now, so there are some episodes in the future that I have recorded, but I haven't gotten to them yet.
I get it.
Yeah, but so usually we don't miss on lines after we've done them that way. And when I have like just one scene with 2 characters that we're recording, then usually I make a script version that just has this particular scene. But it has happened before that I accidentally forgot a scene that happened before or after that scene that I just completely cut out of the script that I sent those actors. And that's not their fault, that's on me.
Exactly. This sort of thing happens.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the sort of volume of material you're collating for an episode in general?
For actors that I don't work with on a regular basis, if they're just there for one episode, I will just make a file for them that has just the scenes that they're in with a little bit of context, what happened before. If the main characters needed to get to the place where this character is, I will give them some context of why those people are now in their character space, or anything that happened to this character, like, oh, they've been hurt and they need to talk in a I'm in pain kind of voice, then I give them that kind of context. Or if they have a specific kind of character that they are, like, oh, they are a little bit motherly and kind and nice, I will make a little, either I put it in the script or I'll write it in the email that I'm sending them, a little bit of intro of what this character is, like, at the core. Sometimes, depending on if I'll actually be in the... Sometimes I don't have directed session with some actors, if they just have like 5 lines, and then I will scan the script for if they are using words that they might not be able to pronounce, and I'll try my very best to do transcript of how it's supposed to pronounce, like with this rhymes with this kind of basis. And sometimes I'll also record the words for them and send those to them.
I was going to ask, that sounds like something, that I can imagine it's often necessary to record it. It's to get that consistency of, because if this is a real language in this world, it needs some level of consistency, I would imagine. And therefore, we should know what that sounds like, or at least the performance. But I mean, how long is your average episode?
Around between 20 and 30 minutes.
So about 20, 30 minutes. And how much material are you having to record to get that 20 or 30 minutes, would you say?
So with the main cast, that's usually about an hour to an hour and a half per character.
Yeah.
Because, I think it's around an hour and a half per character, because we're doing each line 3 times, and if it's a 30-minute episode, then you have that times 3, you have 1 hour and a half.
Yeah, exactly. The reason I'm asking is because I'm trying to sort of make sure that anyone listening who's not new to doing this, what sort of scale to expect. And I mean, I imagine that it's possibly even more in film, because you're having to do movement and capturing all that kind of stuff as well. But I think realizing that you've got to record it multiple times, you've got to, you've got to have different tonality. You're going to have retakes. It's going to take a lot longer than the 30 minutes or so the episode is going to be, but it's an order of magnitude how many times longer per actor that we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. One thing I did notice while doing it is that it is much simpler, as sad as it is, to record with native speakers than it is with non-native speakers. Not because they're bad at it, but just because we need a little bit more time to say the words correctly, or like really like put emotions into the lines that in a language that we're not usually talking in our normal day.
Yeah.
Which is why the main characters are all non-native speakers. That is why each character is 1.5 hours.
I was going to go into that because I've just realised we've actually not covered that part in our conversation yet.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually a pivotal part of what you're doing, because I think you record in English,
Yes.
But they're all non-native English speakers performing.
The three main casts are.
Three main cast characters, yeah.
Yeah.
So why did you, I mean, what is it that decision brings to the story, do you think?
I think it brings a lot to the character to have someone with an accent in there. Production-wise, the idea for me for Counterbalance was always to have my co-worker at the time and myself record two of the main characters, and then get a third to play the last character. Because this is such a long-running story, always felt more comfortable having another non-native speaker take that role for the last character. It's really hard to describe. These characters are very intricate and very deep. In the directed session, we're always going to be needing to go into like deep emotional talks about what arc these characters are going through, and it always felt more vulnerable to have that done with a non-native speaker than with a native speaker.
Completely. And I think it's a fascinating way to do it as well. I mean, obviously, one of the things I've been delighted by in the various interviews I've had with lots of different people is the range of personalities, backgrounds, etc., etc. But I think one of the things that I think you're doing, which is really interesting, is making a deliberate bonus for a deliberate advantage in terms of your storytelling technique by choosing people who are not native English speakers in an English speaking performance, because I think, like you say, that becomes so much part of the characterization, the flavor of the story. It allows us to sort of suspend disbelief in different ways. So I think it's fascinating what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I noticed that I did a casting call for season 3 a couple months ago, and I put in the casting call, I'm specifically looking for people who are either native speakers of like non-native speakers, or who kind of grew up bilingually, who can use an accent, even if it's not their natural accent, but they can code switch into it.
Yes.
Because I also felt like it gives characters a little bit more depth, a little bit more believability, and a little bit more, it spices up the story, because this is a fantasy story, and like if all of them are talking either American English or British English, that kind of, it always felt weird to me, particularly if the characters are from different corners of the world. I personally, as a non-native speaker, always had trouble differentiating between different American accents. Sometimes I heard like fantasy stories where a lot of American accents would happen, and people were like, "Oh, nice Brooklyn accent," or like whatever, and I couldn't tell them apart. They were all American to me, so it all felt like it was from the same place. So I couldn't. It was an immersive killer for me.
Yeah, I mean, I have the classic BBC accent, so I'm never going to get a part on your show. But I think the fact is that I do get what you mean. My experience with that was actually, I went to do I do a lot of talks when I was at Unity as an evangelist. I ended up going down to Colombia, and I found that normally the British accent is the most understandable in terms of like, different cultures will recognize it more readily than other accents, except it turns out in South America. Because the reason why the British accent is so well known is because of a thing called the World Service, which was historically everywhere apart from South America. So it was very weird, people not understanding what I was saying, not realizing I was speaking English.
But they could understand English?
They could understand American English, but they couldn't understand British English. I might as well have been speaking a completely different language. It was bizarre. Anyway, but I think this is the point, isn't it? There's something about the authenticity of somebody using a natural accent that is different from me trying to put on a terrible Yorkshire accent, because of that level of authenticity, because it's a genuine place. It's not like you're having to reach for it or frame yourself. Don't get me wrong. There are people who do amazing American accents. People like Andrew Lincoln and Hugh Laurie did an amazing job. But Hugh Laurie's American accent in Stuart Little was not so good. But when he was doing House, indistinguishable from an American. So again, it's a level of talent. And I think you managed to tell a story in a very interesting way by doing that. Diverse stories, I think, are a very important thing. But I feel like, I don't know enough about your story, and I haven't got far enough in the story to understand it. But are you trying to tell diverse stories and you're using the accent to do it? Or is it that you have a diverse world and you're using the accents to communicate in the same way we might with sound design, to communicate that sense of grandeur in the world out there?
I think it's more than later.
Yeah.
It's definitely like there is a very diverse story, and it's kind of easier to set other characters apart from what is already established as the main characters with a different accent.
Mhm.
And it's much more inclusive to have someone with that native accent do it than someone like who's already established in the actor community, who's already been in everything, and just ask them to do a different voice,
Yeah.
a different accent.
Yeah. If you're enjoying this interview, why not check out this brief trailer from our guest?
Just a moment.
Of course. Sorry, Kessir.
Raka! 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 Oh, excuse me. Pardon me. Excuse me.
Yes.
Raka!
I know.
Raka!
I'm sorry. I'm trying my best.
Just make sure to keep note next time.
Raka!
Fehu, Akasa.
Aurel, what is it?
Do you have a moment?
Not long.
Can you come with me for a moment?
We'll speak later, Yosha.
Yes, please. Yes, of course.
I really don't have that much time, Aurel. I have to prepare the next class.
I'll just be a moment.
Akasar.
Sosvar.
Akasaraka.
Aurel, what are you doing with a student in a closet?
This isn't a closet. We're doing some experiments.
Experiments, Aurel?
I completely get it, and I think it makes a lot of sense. People do that because they're hoping the brand value of that named person brings something to the scene. But I love the fact that, we don't have to do that. We can choose. Well, I think is really fascinating about this sort of indie audio drama scene is that we're able to tell our own stories, new stories, different types of stories, and with different techniques that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So let's sort of take this back a bit. So you've got this production ready, you've got the hours of material, you're doing the dialogue process, you're doing the sound design process, you're packaging up, you're releasing it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the biggest challenge in releasing that content and finding an audience for it?
Yeah, actually getting audiences to find it, to listen to it, because between seasons, to catch up on my episode backlog, I take extended breaks, so it falls off the radar for a lot of old listeners, and getting them back to listen after like a month of more than a month, after like almost a year of hiatus, is quite hard.
Incredibly difficult.
It's very difficult. So I'm really happy to be part of the Blighthouse studio now, because someone else is doing the whole marketing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like one of the harder things for me is like putting it out on social media and finding out which social media is currently the okay one to post to, not because of the whole political thing going on, but people keep moving from, like, people used to be on Tumblr a lot, now they're on Twitter/X a lot, now they're on Blue Sky a lot, and Blue Sky is not a place to be promoting something, because people are just talking about their personal lives. It's not a promotion based platform.
No, in fact I'd argue that, well, from my experience, the traditional kind of methodologies of using social media as your primary driver for audience it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they'll always be useful for places to communicate a sense of identity. I say always, maybe X is a little bit. I like the fact that Elon changed it to X, because it's now the X social platform, which I think has a sort of linguistic kind of like quality to it. Sorry, I'm being mean, being political. I just think there's an irony to that, which is that, it's the X social platform. It used to be social. It's not anymore. It's an X social platform. Sorry, that's very bad of me. The point, though, is that I think that what I think seems to be working in this space is to build your tribe, your community. And I think the best way that we do that is by connecting. And I think, like you say, being part of Blight House, it's a great example. I'm very lucky that the guys at Fable and Folly took my Anything Could Happen in. I still have yet to do a whole bunch of work to build an audience on that. But that comes with having a full-time day job and in the middle of raising money for a tech company. But then, we all have things to try us. But in terms of getting that like release process going, are you doing that yourself? Do you have folks who do that for you? Because there's a bit of packaging to do to get this into. I don't know if you're using a megaphone or a.
Yeah, we're using megaphone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've still got to get the asset ready. You've got to submit it. You've got to write the documentation. You've got to decide if it's going to have what ads where they're going to place.
Yeah.
There's analytics that go with that.
Yeah, that's usually almost a whole day for me to get all of that ready, because I also have like a special cover art for each episode. Need to package those up, get those up on Megaphone.
Yeah.
I also have a website that goes with it, where on the website you have the transcript of the entire episode, so I need to fix that up so it's actually usable. Then like create the entire list of actors that are in each episode. And depending on how many actors I have or like what actors I have, I want to make it, because it's already on the website, I might as well link to the actors, either social media or their website. So if anyone wants to cast them, go ahead. The information is here.
Well, you've also got the characters. You've got you've got nice little thumbnails for each of the characters. You've got a little bit of a teaser for each of them.
Yeah.
You definitely kind of seem to be kind of create a kind of sense of the world very, very quickly.
Yeah. I try to establish, like, I try to make the world feel a little bit more real by having those, like, a little bit of visual elements to it.
Yeah.
I know that people in the audio drama community that will probably tell you, nope, it needs to be audio, and like people need to use their imagination. But I like to give a little bit of like implication of what the world could feel like, or like a little bit of something that is like a vibe, even if it's just a color, a shape, or a light situation that helps establish the quote unquote flavor of the episode.
Absolutely.
I like to add that. That's just how I personally like to do things.
I completely get it. I think so. Obviously, we choose to use video. We're on video now. We're going to be using that video for various things. I think there's something powerful about visual impact, which is important. But also, I'm deliberately trying to make content which works as audio specifically. So I try to make sure that anything I'm doing plays on audio without the need for the images. But if you want to see who we are, what we look like, our emotional reaction on our faces, the way I use my hands too much, or my amazing hat, I want you to be able to see that so you get some flavor of who we are and that authenticity. And it's interesting how with Spotify adding video now and the impact that seems to have on adoption and take up, I think we have a generation of people who have evolved from the kind of audio radio in the background to the second screen.
Yeah.
And I think that's often been driven by games, I would argue.
Yeah. And creatives that just want to have something playing in the background.
Yeah.
I have noticed that a lot of people, like the understanding of what a podcast is has changed over the years, and now a podcast is very often a YouTube channel.
Yeah. I mean, given that the very word refers to the device.
Yep.
It was the Apple iPod that did the thing, which was, anyway, I'm going on too much. Anyway, so we've talked a whole bunch about how you got into this, the approaches you've taken, your world building approach, how much effort you put into creating a language, creating these characters, drawing people into your world by utilizing this language, but this context, this story of a larger world that you'd already planned stories in. But I think importantly, the use of non-native English speakers to create a sense of authenticity and flavour into that process. And obviously all that's part of weaved into your long-running narrative centred around these three characters. We've talked about how you package that together and get that ready for the market, but also complexities that's involved with that. If you had to, if you were asked by somebody, what if I wanted to start off making this kind of audio drama, what would be the advice you'd give them?
So a lot of people are overwhelmed by thinking that there is so much stuff that they need. For example, a very good microphone or very good actors, or you need to have a final draft or whatever it's called to write a good script. You don't need any of that. You can literally start with, Windows Editor or Word if you wanted
Notepad.
to. Notepad.
Just use Notepad. Yeah.
You can write a script in Notepad. That works if you can read that. And you can you record on a shitty little laptop with a snowball. You don't need super great gear to get started. You just need basic things. Nowadays, you could probably even record on your phone.
No, you joke. Your phone is probably better than a lot of the USB mics. And as a video camera, it's definitely better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's better than most webcams.
Yeah, just start with your phone.
Yeah. Seriously, I mean, it's absolutely the case. No question about it.
Yeah. For me personally, one thing that always kept me away from writing scripts was the fact that I have trouble reading if there's like a whole page of text. My eyes just go, nope, I'm not reading any of that. And what helped me realize that I can actually write scripts was something as simple as using the font Courier New, because suddenly all the scripts were like, all the letters were the exact same size, and like my eyes were just, I can read this, and my eyes just flew over the page.
And but this is, if for a lot of dyslexic people, there are specific fonts that absolutely change that. Even things like the background color, the color contrast changes, they can make huge amounts of differences. The double spacing, separating out paragraph spacing can make a huge amount of difference. This font size, I mean, what works for you is what works for you.
Exactly. Don't, like, if you go into a group and ask for opinions, you're going to get a lot of opinions, but none of them are going to work for you.
Yes.
You have to find your own thing that works.
Yeah, there is a comment about opinions and how everybody has one and how everyone has something else, another part of their body, but we're not going to go into that one.
Yeah.
Family show, folks. But
if you're just writing a script for like yourself and maybe some friends to record, then your friends are going to get used to how you write your scripts and how you do things. Just do it with a few people you trust. Don't go out trying to cast big names just yet. Like try to cast
Reynolds, will you be on my audio drama, please?
Yeah, you can just do it with some people you know. That's like, do it with the people you trust.
And I'd reinforce that. For me, there's a sort of Nike JFDI. A kind of just do it type thing. I'll let you interpret what DF is. But the idea of just do it, I think, is really important. I think the other thing of this is, in order to get good at something, we have to see what failing looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Until we fail, we can't learn. And a big believer in Mythbusters, failure is always an option. There's another one I love, which is the only difference between science and screwing around is writing things down. By which, in this context, I mean actually pay attention to what you've written and why it worked and didn't work, and then work with that knowledge on doing the next one. I'm also a big fan of it. There's a lot of great frameworks out there. I mean, obviously people talk about the Joseph Campbell one, which is the obvious one, but there's the 3-act play, 5-act play. There's the Save the Cat. Is it Save the Cat? Anyway, there's a whole bunch of different ways of telling stories, and not all of them have to follow the Western traditions either. Mm-hmm. There are amazing books out there exploring different ways how we can tell stories, how we can set up things, how we can communicate ideas. To my mind, it's not about adhering to a particular formula. It's about understanding why those formulas exist, to be able to create that sense of anticipation and fear of missing out, the desire to engage, the feeling of ownership and investment in the story. Those are the things we want to get, and we get them through practice, and we only get to practice if we do it. And if we do it, we get to be better at it. Anyway, so yeah, love it. Any last minute thoughts?
Just to add to what you have already said, like, don't just do it, but also observe the things you like and try to analyze why you think they work. And if you have a friend who also likes them, try to discuss and, just find someone you can bounce off of. Yeah. I have someone like that. I like to just randomly consume some media and like to just tell my friend why I liked something and try to get to the bottom of why I think something worked. And that ultimately helps me personally understand the medium better and how I can use that in my trade.
Makes sense entirely. Kessir, thank you so much. That's been fantastic
Thank
chatting
you.
to you. And please go out and check out Counterbalance. A great podcast and great stories being told. There's so many great storytellers out there. We didn't even get into talking about your actual play stuff and Lucky Die and all that. We'll have to do that another time. But it's been fabulous chatting to you. There's so many different ways we can tell stories. And I think at the end of the day, understanding the story we want to tell, crafting it, and then finding the way to get it out there. But I loved what you said there at the end, Kessir, just getting down and doing it. And there's a paragraph or something in Stephen King's on writing which goes along the lines of, if you want to be a writer, you have to write 2 hours a day and you have to read 2 hours a day. And for me, the same thing applies to game making, the same thing applies to writing stories, video dramas, you name it. We get to be good at it by doing it. On that note, thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, follow, share, all the usual stuff. And as I say, check out the Counterbalance and all the other Lucky Die and all these other great storytelling experiences. And we'll be back again next time talking to somebody else about the joys of audio storytelling. Thank you very much.
Bye.